Your actions in dragging Mr. Berry's naked body into the garden, leaving him there, lying about his whereabouts and disposing of his property was disturbing.
It was Fang's son who killed Ms. Zhong, and that when he did so, he intended to kill her.
Took the life of a 2-year-old child. This is not a drug case. This is the highest crime that there is in society here, so...
In the peaceful town of Charlestown, Rhode Island, what seemed like a typical morning on September 19th, 2022, turned into a tragedy. A 911 call was made from a house on Biscuit City Road where 3 people were living together. One of the roommates had discovered 45-year-old Gria Pihlkrantz with stab wounds. She was rushed to South County Hospital, but was pronounced dead shortly after. The roommate who called for help later told police she had seen 25-year-old Alex S. Rowland, another resident of the home, holding a large knife and smiling before she asked him to leave. Moments later, she found Gria gravely injured. Police found Rowland walking near the home and took him into custody. During questioning, he admitted to stabbing Gria with a black buck knife. He was then taken to the Hope Valley State Police Barracks, processed, and charged with murder. The following day, the court ordered him held without bail on a first-degree murder charge.
This defendant was transported to Hope Valley Barracks and read his rights. He eventually admitted to stabbing Miss Pihlkrantz with a black buck knife.
That was the hardest, by far, to be within reach of someone that my best friend.
Gria, originally from Narragansett, had only lived at the Charlestown residence for a few months. Her best friend, Kelly Fanning, shared heartfelt memories outside the courtroom.
She had her little quirks about her, her little laughs she'd do that were like obscene and loud, but everybody knew that was Gria.
She described Gria as a warm, gentle person with a big laugh and a kind heart.
It's just tragic. It's just tragic.
The violent crime left the Charlestown community shaken. Friends and neighbors mourned the loss of someone remembered for her light and peaceful nature. In February 2023, a statewide grand jury indicted Rowland for murder and possession of a knife during a violent crime. In January 2009, Franklin Bonner, a 68-year-old man from Chattanooga, Tennessee, was found deceased in his home under suspicious circumstances. Though authorities launched an investigation, the case remained unsolved for nearly 10 years. In 2018, the Hamilton County Cold Case Unit reopened the investigation. While re-examining the evidence, investigators identified 2 partial fingerprints on the duct tape. These prints matched Angel Bumpass. She was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and especially aggravated robbery. Another suspect, Mallory Vaughn, 26 at the time of the crime, was also charged in connection to the case. The trial began in October 2019. Prosecutors claimed the murder was part of a robbery motivated by cash and marijuana. Their case against Bumpass centered largely on the fingerprint evidence.
You left your fingerprints there. And this is unrefuted testimony. Unrefuted that those are her fingerprints on the duct tape. And it's not just in a single location. It's in 2 separate locations.
Her defense attorneys argued that a girl weighing only 80 pounds at the time could not have committed such a violent act. They also emphasized her consistent denial of involvement.
I told you that you would hear from a grieving widow who desperately wants to find the real killer in her case, in her husband's case. And the prosecutor's office desperately wants to give her that. That's no reason to put an innocent man in jail.
Convicting a 13-year-old little girl of murder does not get us there. That is not perpetuating the wheels of justice. That is the opposite direction.
Mallory Vaughn was acquitted, while Angel Bumpass was convicted and sentenced to life. In 2022, a judge granted her a new trial due to issues with the original proceedings. She was released on bond, and in 2023, after passing polygraph tests and with no new evidence against her, all charges were dismissed, though the case remains open. Over a decade later, Franklin Bonner's death is still officially unsolved. In March 2017, emergency responders arrived at a mobile home in Marilla, New York, where a boy named Ethan Bigham had been reported with serious injuries. At the time, Ethan had been left in the care of Devin Vanderweege, who was babysitting him. Despite being rushed to the hospital, Ethan passed away 2 days later. Authorities launched an investigation, which eventually led to Vanderweege being charged. Initially facing a more serious offense, he later pleaded guilty to manslaughter in February 2018. In May of that year, a judge sentenced him to 20 years in prison. The judge also denied him youthful offender status. Erie County District Attorney John Flynn agreed with the decision, stating that the loss of a life demanded full accountability under the law.
He deserves the full punishment for this crime. I mean, he took the life of a 2-year-old child. This is not a drug case. This is not a burglary case, or even a serious felony of robbery. This is taking the life of a 2-year-old. This is the highest crime that there is in society here. So he does not deserve youthful offender status.
During the same period, Ethan's mother, Heather Schopflin, was charged with endangering the welfare of a child. Investigators claimed she failed to get proper medical attention for Ethan, despite visible concerns after his time with the babysitter. She pleaded guilty later that year and was sentenced to 1 year in jail, the maximum for that offense. In December 2022, Leila Duarte DeLuz, a woman from Brockton, Massachusetts, was picked up early in the morning by Gary Gromkiewicz and Michael Lambert. She had previously been in a relationship with Gromkiewicz and was pregnant at the time. That morning, the group traveled through several towns in Rhode Island, stopping in places like Warwick and Lincoln. Surveillance footage and cell phone data later helped trace their path. Later that same day, a fisherman at Carbuncle Pond in Coventry made a tragic discovery. Leila's body was found beneath the icy surface of the water. The medical examiner later confirmed that she had entered the water while still alive. Based on the investigation, authorities concluded that Gromkiewicz and Lambert had planned the act. As investigators looked deeper into the case, they learned that Gromkiewicz and Lambert had first met while incarcerated. Lambert was on parole at the time of Leila's death, having previously served a sentence for an earlier conviction.
2022, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
In January 2025, after a 10-day trial, 2 separate juries found both men guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy. The case relied heavily on digital evidence and location tracking that placed them at the scene. On March 28, 2025, both Gromkiewicz and Lambert were sentenced to life in prison, with an additional 10 years for the conspiracy charge. The sentencing marked the end of a difficult chapter, bringing justice in a case that deeply affected many. In March 2016, the town of Woonsocket, Rhode Island, was shaken by the death of 81-year-old Constance Gauthier, who was found unresponsive in her home. A neighbor made the discovery and alerted authorities. The case raised immediate concern due to the condition in which she was found, leading to a lengthy and complex investigation. For nearly 2 years, there were no arrests. Then, in 2018, investigators made a breakthrough. DNA found on furniture in Gauthier's bedroom was matched to Matthew Dussault, who had previously spent time in the home. He was indicted for first-degree murder and pleaded not guilty, claiming the evidence didn't prove his involvement. The case went to trial in early 2025. Prosecutors presented DNA evidence and argued that the crime involved aggravated circumstances. The defense pointed to Dussault's prior visits to the home, arguing that the presence of his DNA was not proof of guilt.
He's been in that house. He's helped that woman. His mother has been in that house. There's no way. There's just no way. There's no way. I know in my heart, and I know if he deserved to be there, we would be saying he deserves to be there. This is a heinous crime. Connie needs justice, and he needs justice, and it's just devastating.
After a week-long trial, Matthew Dussault was found guilty of first-degree murder, with the jury also finding aggravating factors. Gauthier's family expressed relief, while Dussault's relatives continued to assert his innocence. A motion for a new trial was denied in early 2025. His sentencing, initially set for March 28th, has been postponed to May, where he faces life in prison without parole. Charges against a neighbor initially involved in the case were previously dropped due to insufficient evidence. Elizabeth Zhong, a respected Auckland businesswoman, co-founded Sunbo Limited in 2013 with Chinese investor Fang Sun. Their partnership eventually soured due to financial disagreements, with Sun accusing Zhong of mismanaging millions of dollars. The dispute led to a civil court case, and by late 2020, the company was ordered into liquidation. Zhong's mental health declined during this time, and unknown to her, Sun had moved nearby and begun secretly monitoring her with the help of a private investigator. On November 28, 2020, Zhong was found dead inside her vehicle. Authorities launched a homicide investigation, which eventually led to Sun's arrest in February 2021. Evidence showed that Sun had been tracking Zhong's movements and had entered her home the night before she was found. Prosecutors argued that the crime was premeditated and fueled by financial revenge. They also dismissed claims that another man, Kai Gui-jung, was involved, citing lack of motive and opportunity.
As he said in his evidence, Fang Sun nearly cut Ms. Zhong's head off. So I suggest to you that the answer to that third question must also be yes. At the time when he inflicted those injuries, he clearly intended to kill Ms. Zhong. In fact, you might consider it was a planned, a focused, and a determined attack to achieve precisely that outcome. The Crown says that based on the evidence, you can be sure that Kai Gui-jing did not kill Ms. Zhong. There was no reason for him to do so, and he was at home when she was murdered. Instead, you can be sure it was Fang Sun who killed Ms. Zhong, and that when he did so, he intended to kill her. Crown says you can be sure that Fang Sun is guilty of murder. I suggest to you, and it won't be lost on any of you, that the bitter dispute over money is what prompted this violent retribution. We know Mr. Sun blames Elizabeth Zhong for losing him $26 million. Certainly he's tried to use legal proceedings to get that money back, but I suggest he's had to watch after asset disappeared without him seeing a cent. Crown says that Fang Sun was angry enough to threaten to kill her and angry enough to follow through on those threats. I suggest that Fang Sun's feelings for Ms. Zhong can be seen no more clearly than in his obsessive surveillance of her. As you know, in around July 2020, he hired Jun Jin to follow Ms. Zhong to sit outside her house. He seemed willing to pay $30,000 for Mr. Jin to do that. How can Kai Gui-jing frame Fang Sun if he doesn't know where he lives? And the answer is quite simple. He couldn't.
Sun's trial began in April 2022 and lasted 6 weeks. In August of that year, a jury found him guilty of murder. The judge sentenced him to life in prison with a minimum non-parole period of 18 years and 6 months, calling the act calculated and deeply troubling. In 2017, a tragic shooting unfolded near Valley Plaza Mall in Bakersfield, California. It began with a confrontation between members of two rival gangs. During the altercation, Jonathan Knight opened fire from a vehicle driven by Jeremy King. The shots were intended for a rival gang member, but instead, they struck a car carrying two boys, killing Kase Gayton and injuring his brother Brian Jr.
I apologize for what happened, but I didn't do nothing wrong.
Following a lengthy investigation and trial, Jonathan Knight was found guilty in early 2024 on 11 out of 12 charges, including the murder of Kase Gayton. In court, he continued to deny responsibility, claiming he wasn't to blame.
I'm not that type of person, and hopefully I feel I could show it really happened. Somebody going home tomorrow, it's everything.
The jury disagreed, and he was sentenced to life in prison without parole, along with multiple additional life sentences totaling over 380 years.
Life without the possibility of parole.
For Kasen's family, while no sentence can undo their loss, the outcome brought some relief, knowing the person responsible for the boy's death will remain behind bars.
It's hard to say closure. I mean, obviously to lose a 5-year-old son, someone with so much promise, someone they love so much, to say closure, Ultimately, I don't know if that would ever happen, but however, at least they know that the person that killed him will see justice.
Jeremy King, originally charged with murder, agreed to testify against Knight in exchange for a reduced sentence. His charge was lowered to voluntary manslaughter, and with credit for time served, he could be released soon. In Christchurch, New Zealand, the relationship between Rena Joyce and her partner Martin Barry had a long and troubled history. Over the years, Joyce had been convicted multiple times for physically harming Barry. In early 2020, Barry was granted a final protection order against her, and police had responded to several family harm incidents at his home. Barry had shared with his friends, family, and probation officer that he was feeling unsafe and increasingly fearful.
You had the 3 prior convictions for assaulting Mr. Barry. He had obtained a final protection against you following the last conviction in early 2020. The police had attended his address on multiple occasions following family harm incidents. Mr. Barry had complained to his family, to his friends and to his probation officer that he was scared for his own safety, that he was embarrassed at his predicament.
In late December 2020, things took a tragic turn. After a heated argument at their home, Martin Barry lost his life. Instead of seeking help, Joyce hid his body. Over the following days, she disposed of his belongings, misled people about his whereabouts, and tried to carry on as if nothing had happened. During this time, she also relapsed into heavy drinking, which was later acknowledged by the court as having influenced her decisions in the days that followed. In January 2021, Joyce eventually went to the police and confessed. She was arrested and charged with murder. During her trial, the court heard from more than 30 witnesses. In 2022, she was found guilty.
But generally, looking at the issue of cruelty, Mrs. Joyce, your actions in dragging Mr. Barry's naked body into the garden, leaving him there, lying about his whereabouts and disposing of his property was disturbing, and it caused so much harm to Mr. Barry's family, as you've heard this morning. Rena Joyce, on the charge of murdering Martin Barry, I sentence you to life imprisonment with a minimum period of imprisonment of 13 years and 9 months. I remind you of the strike warning that I gave you following the jury's verdict.
At sentencing, Justice Jonathan Eaton described her actions as showing a clear pattern of domestic harm, with a high level of disregard for Barry's dignity and the impact on his loved ones. Joyce was sentenced to life in prison with a non-parole period of 13 years and 9 months. On December 31st, 2024, Mitchell Burke, a 32-year-old man from Worcester, Massachusetts, left home to meet with his former employer, Ryan Wilcox, also 32. According to investigators, Wilcox later admitted to striking Burke during their interaction. Over the following days, Wilcox, with the help of 2 acquaintances, Richard Gabrilla and Shane Bowen, transported Burke, who was reportedly still alive at the time, to a wooded area in Hubbardston. Once there, Wilcox allegedly inflicted further harm before leaving the scene. They attempted to hide what had happened by disposing of personal belongings and misleading others. On January 4th, 2025, Burke's body was discovered in the woods off Brigham Street. Wilcox was arrested shortly after at his home in Worcester and later charged with murder. Gabrilla and Bowen were charged as accessories after the fact. Although the court records did not specify a motive, prosecutors highlighted the seriousness of the case.
Obviously, the charges are very serious. We have a lot more questions and answers at this point. He maintains his innocence, and we're looking forward to our day in court.
Wilcox's legal team stated that he maintains his innocence and plans to challenge the charges during trial. The investigation is ongoing, and all individuals involved are awaiting further court proceedings. On the evening of December 30th, 2024, emergency responders in Lowell, Massachusetts were called after reports of a person lying in the road. When officers arrived, they found 24-year-old Nikl Israni with shot wounds.
I came out and I saw the guy on the floor, and the paramedic was trying to survive him, right? And then I just saw them running faster to the ambulance.
He was rushed to Lowell General Hospital, where he was later pronounced dead. This left the neighborhood shaken, creating a sense of fear and unease among residents.
Like
unsettling.
Unsettling, yes, that's the word. I feel scared because it's in front of my street, so it's kind of my neighbor, right?
According to investigators, Israni had met with 20-year-old Bravinda Mawanda earlier that night to carry out a drug exchange. While the two sat in Israni's car, a confrontation occurred. Police allege that Mawanda gained control of a firearm and shot Israni before fleeing to a nearby apartment. Surveillance footage and witness accounts helped detectives identify Mawanda as the primary suspect. During questioning, police said he admitted to the shooting and described where he had hidden the weapon inside his home. Mawanda was arrested shortly after and charged with murder and multiple firearms offenses. He appeared in Lowell District Court, where a not guilty plea was entered on his behalf, and he was ordered to be held without bail. The case remains under investigation by the Lowell Police Department, Massachusetts State Police, and the Middlesex District Attorney's Office. On the evening of November 28, 2015, 66-year-old Donald DePina, a respected Vietnam veteran and longtime taxi driver in New Bedford, Massachusetts, picked up two passengers, Alexander Mills and his companion, Cameron McCarthy. The boys asked to be taken to Brooklawn Park, a quiet area of the city.
I know that the defendant was armed with a .25 caliber handgun.
According to prosecutors, once they arrived, a confrontation took place inside the vehicle. Investigators later determined that a weapon was involved, and DePina sustained fatal injuries.
That activated a recording system inside of the cabin. The defendant is actually seen on video.
Surveillance equipment installed in the taxi helped authorities piece together what had happened. The two boys left the scene, taking DePina's belongings, including his wallet and credit cards. These were later used at nearby businesses, providing further evidence. Police quickly identified the suspects through fingerprints and security footage. Both were arrested within days.
Donald was just one terrific individual. How people can take a life of someone like this is just beyond my imagination.
Donald DePina was remembered as a kind-hearted man who served his country and worked hard to support his family.
The only time that there appeared that he was competent to a court in this very building was when he was properly medicated when he came in. Then they found him to be competent. When he was on his medication, went off. It's anybody's guess.
During court proceedings, it was revealed that Mills had a documented history of mental health struggles. He was evaluated at Bridgewater State Hospital. In 2020, he pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and armed robbery, receiving a life sentence with parole eligibility after 32.5 years. His co-defendant, McCarthy, pleaded guilty to manslaughter and was sentenced in 2018 to 10 to 15 years in prison. On the afternoon of May 7, 2021, a devastating crash unfolded on US 131 at the intersection with West XY Avenue in Schoolcraft Township, Michigan. Joel Shaffer, 83, and his wife Dolores, 84, married for 66 years, were driving eastbound in their Chevrolet Impala when their car was struck on the driver's side by a speeding Dodge Durango. The SUV, operated by 27-year-old Ezra Phillips of Saginaw, had run a red light at an alarmingly high speed. Phillips was later found to have been traveling at approximately 115 miles per hour and had a blood alcohol level of 0.14%, nearly twice the legal limit. A partially consumed bottle of margarita wine was discovered inside his vehicle, and it was determined that he was driving with a suspended license at the time. The force of the impact left no chance for the elderly couple. Both Joel and Dolores were pronounced at the scene. Following a thorough investigation, Phillips was charged with multiple felonies, 2 counts of operating while intoxicated causing death, 2 counts of driving with a suspended license causing death, and initially 2 counts of second-degree murder. However, during his trial, he was acquitted of the murder charges but convicted on the remaining counts related to impaired and unlicensed driving. Nearly 2 years later, on March 10, 2023, the courtroom fell silent as Mike Shaffer, the couple's son, stood to deliver his victim impact statement during the sentencing hearing at the Kalamazoo County Courthouse.
On May 7th, 2021, three Michigan State police cars pulled into our driveway. They walked up to our door and gave me the devastating news. My parents had been killed in a terrible car crash. I instantly doubled over in pain and emotion. Processing this was hard enough, but then I realized I had to tell my 2 sisters and other family members what I just heard, which made me physically sick to my stomach. This was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life, and do not wish it on my worst enemy. The tragedy of a terrible car crash is hard enough, but to know that it was caused by a person that acted maliciously, irresponsibly, and selfish way is almost too much. This person is Ezra Phillips. He made choices that day that would drastically affect the lives of our family and his also. When he got behind the wheel of that car, he did not care that his license was revoked or that he had been drinking and driving over twice the legal speed limit. He did not care that these actions placed my innocent parents tragically and unknowingly in the crosshairs of his impairment. They were killed that day without any chance to say goodbye, no opportunity to say I love you one last time. You took that from them. My parents were pillars of the community, and all those who loved and relied on them will forever feel their loss as a deep void in their hearts. We all wanted to say goodbye to them. We all wanted to say I love you to them. All of us, including our grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Mom and Dad had such an impact on so many people. They were not done giving. They had a lot more to give. They raised us to believe in family and to understand its importance. Family reunions, holiday gatherings, and birthdays always meant something special. They taught us to be there for one another and to love and support those who needed it. We would take a family vacation every summer, which involved camping together. As we got older and had children and grandchildren, they would never miss this because that's who they were. It was a special time for all of us, and however many of these we had left were stolen by your actions that day. Ezra Phillips stole these last memories. I can only hope the consequences and choices that day will provide time for reflection and remorse for both the lives lost and lives changed, including his own. They say nothing is ever really dead if you look at it the right way. I will always choose to look at their lives in the right way. The way we were as a loving family and 2 of the best human beings I ever met. I was so privileged to call them Mom and Dad. However, Ezra, you have also made it impossible to forget the images of my parents' car and the total devastation of the crash you caused that day. The good memories hopefully will prevail, but the nightmare of that day will never go away. You took my parents, but you'll never take the memories.
Fighting through emotion, he recounted the unbearable moment when Michigan State Police arrived at his home to deliver the heartbreaking news. Telling his sisters and other family members was, in his words, one of the hardest things he's ever done. He recalled the strong family values his parents upheld, their love for holiday gatherings, summer camping trips, and supporting each other through life's moments. Though the memories of Joel and Dolores bring comfort, Mike acknowledged that the horror of that day would never fully fade. Ezra Phillips was ultimately sentenced to 20 to 30 years in prison on 2 counts of operating while intoxicated, causing death. The sentence, though a measure of justice, served as a solemn reminder of the irreversible damage caused by one reckless decision. Josiah Robert Oakley, born in 2000 and raised in Minneapolis, Minnesota, was a bright, curious young man with a love for chess, nature, and puzzles. Known for mentoring youth and spreading his passion for the game, he balanced academics, sports, and music throughout his time at Minneapolis Edison High School. By the age of 22, Josiah was known by many as a gentle giant, kind-hearted, intelligent, and full of promise. But on the night of December 11th, 2022, everything changed While driving south on Lyndale Avenue North, Josiah entered the intersection at 42nd Avenue. In that moment, an SUV came speeding through a red light and struck his vehicle. The SUV was driven by 40-year-old Sylvester Terrell Vaughn. Josiah died at the scene from injuries. As the investigation unfolded, it was revealed that Vaughn was intoxicated, his blood alcohol level measured at 0.236%, nearly 3 times the legal limit. He was also driving with a revoked license and had a prior DWI conviction from 2019. On February 24th, 2023, prosecutors filed 2 counts of criminal vehicular homicide against Vaughn, but when he failed to appear in court, a nationwide warrant was issued for his arrest. Authorities located and arrested him on March 22, 2023, without incident. Eventually, Vaughn agreed to a plea deal, pleading guilty to 1 count of criminal vehicular homicide involving gross negligence. On July 3, 2023, the sentencing was held in Hennepin County. During the hearing, Josiah's grandmother, Sarah Pryor, gave a heartfelt victim impact statement.
I am Josiah Robert Oakley's grandmother. Each time I try to write something about my precious Josiah, I start shaking and get sick to my stomach because I can't believe I'm writing an impact statement for my grandson. So what do I say to the judge, to the lawyers, to the courts, to anyone else in the justice system that you have not already heard? That would make a difference. I know the courts have either heard or read about my Josiah, who he was, our gentle giant, wonderful grandson, outstanding son, fantastic brother, nephew, cousin, and a friend, and a great friend, not to mention all that he's accomplished in his 22 years of life. Today, I'm going to talk about my grandson, my grandbaby, differently. I have always told my children that when my grandchildren can't speak, I am their voice. And because I know what Joe would say to me, I'm going to talk to the courts about Joe as if he's talking to me. Grandma, on the morning of December 11, 2022, I was driving on my way home to Mom, Desiree Oakley, and Marty. After doing the Christmas thing with my dad, Clifton Johnson, my stepmom, Cindy Johnson, my brothers, Caden and Devin Johnson, my sister, Haley Freeman, that we do every year, and from hanging out with my buddies. I was at the stoplight on 42nd and Lyndale in North Minneapolis when the light turned green for me to go. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a drunken driver hit me. Grandma, it happened so fast that the impact was so strong, I didn't know what hit me. I didn't have a chance to respond. All I know is that I'm no longer here. My life is over. And you, Mom, Dad, Cindy, Haley, Caden, Malia, and Devin must go on without me. What happened to me was tragic, something I had no control of. This is not what I planned for my life, Grandma, at least not in this way. When my parents were told by the police what happened to me, I can imagine the blow, the shock, the disbelief, excruciating, god-awful pain and hurt it did not only to my parents, but to you, my siblings, relatives, and friends. From that moment, our lives changed forever. Mom Cindy called you right away when she and Dad got the news. You yelled so loud the whole building heard you. This was and still is difficult news for you, Mom, Dad, Cindy, Haley, Caden, Malia, and Devin. Not to mention my uncles, aunts, cousins, friends, and the many lives I've touched. I wish that day never happened. I don't know this Sylvester Vaughn. I've never met him and never caused him any trouble. Yet he took my life and caused my family and friends a lifetime of loss and pain. He decided that it was more important for him to drink and drive and take my life that day. He cannot begin to comprehend the tremendous damage he has done and the lives he's destroyed. Because if he did, I would be alive today, and you, Grandma, Mom, Dad, Mom, Cindy, Caden, Haley, and Malia, and Devin wouldn't be here today in court giving my impact statement. Since I'm not here, I know without a doubt you, Mom, Cindy, Marty, Dad, Mom, Cindy, my siblings, relatives, and friends will do whatever is in your power to see that justice is served. The right thing and the only thing Sylvester Vaughn could do is to take accountability and be punished for his actions so that what happened to me doesn't happen to another family.
Through tears, she described the pain of losing her grandson, his smile, his laughter, his dreams for the future, all gone in a moment. She questioned how someone with a DWI history could be back behind the wheel and pleaded for stronger consequences to prevent similar tragedies.
My son's life is worth more than 48 months. If it was your child, would you accept 48 months? We cannot continue as a society to stick our heads in the sand and allow more innocent people to die.
Josiah's family expressed their grief and dissatisfaction with the plea deal, feeling it did not adequately reflect the severity of Vaughn's actions. Vaughn was sentenced to 4 years in prison, with credit for time already served. He was also ordered to pay $9,743.04 in restitution to Josiah's family. On June 19, 2021, a hit-and-run incident took place on West Main Street Extension in Ware Shoals, Greenwood County, South Carolina. Timothy Waller, a pedestrian, was struck by a vehicle and left severely injured in a roadside ditch. The South Carolina Highway Patrol responded to the scene and found debris, which led them to search for a dark-colored Kia Optima. Investigators traced the vehicle to Andrew Odell, who was eventually located and arrested. Waller's injuries were severe, and he faced a long road to recovery with extensive rehabilitation ahead.
On the 19th June 2021, here in the county of Greenwood on Secondary 38, referred to as West Main Street Extension in the town of Ware Shoals, the Highway Patrol was dispatched to a collision involving a pedestrian. The trooper arrived, pedestrian was located in the ditch along the roadway of West Main Street, observed a debris field. Through the investigation, they were able to collect multiple parts. A vehicle profile was generated, and a search began looking for a Kia Optima, dark gray, dark blue in color. As a result of our investigation of searching for the vehicle, we were able to locate Mr. Odell and Mr. Odell's vehicle. Our collision reconstruction unit mate was also involved, interviewed Mr. Odell. As a result of the investigation and the interview, an arrest was made for a hit and run with great bodily injury. The victim in this case was found to Mr. Waller. Mr. Timothy Waller was walking west on Secondary 38, West Main Street and roadway, when Mr. Odell's vehicle struck him with the left front and left side, resulting in great bodily injury to Mr. Odell. He was transported by Greenwood EMS to Self Regional Hospital, where he is there currently being treated for his injuries. And as a result of that, he's going to have several surgeries for those injuries.
Meanwhile, Odell's criminal history was revealed during the investigation.
Reviewing over his criminal history, Mr. Odell's got several charges. He was convicted of another leaving the scene of the accident. Conviction date was October of 2016. Also convicted of giving false information, October of 2016. He has a weapons charge where he was convicted on May of 2018. And then several other charges that have resulted in either a non-conviction or null process in this case.
Okay. I just want to ask one question. You said that he had a prior hit and run. Was that
Yes,
in
ma'am.
what year again?
That was in 2016, October 27th was the court date or the conviction date for it. It was for leaving the scene of an accident, unattended vehicle.
Okay.
He had previously been convicted for leaving the scene of an accident in 2016, and he had additional charges, including giving false information and a weapons offense in 2018, though some charges had been dismissed. In April 2025, Odell appeared before Judge Warren for a bond hearing. The judge clarified that the hearing was about setting bond, not determining guilt or innocence.
With that being said, I have you here on one warrant today for a hit and run. Duties of a driver involved in an accident with great bodily injury. This charge carries a maximum penalty of 10 years in prison. Not to say that that's what you'll get, but that is the maximum penalty for this charge, okay?
Victim's advocate Sarah Trevon spoke at the hearing, stressing the severity of Waller's injuries and Odell's criminal history. She argued that Odell posed a risk of flight and danger to the community.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Your Honor. My name is Sarah Trevon. I'm the victim advocate with the South Carolina Highway Patrol. Timothy Waller is currently hospitalized at Self. Speaking with his mother, who is currently with him, he had to undergo a 4 to 5 hour long surgery to get a rod put in his leg and his arm. There's a potential for another surgery down the line in the future, depending on how his body accepts the one that was done previously. And then there's extensive rehab in his future afterwards for him to recover from this accident. After speaking with his mother and the family, they would like bond to be denied. Understanding that that might not be a possibility, they've asked for a high cash surety bond along with the GPS monitoring and a no contact order. From what First Sergeant Brown has said, the defendant has an extensive criminal history, along with a prior leaving the scene. I would consider that being a flight risk and a danger to the community. And on behalf of the South Carolina Highway Patrol, I would also ask that his bond be denied, or if you are inclined, it be a high cash surety bond along with the GPS monitoring and a no contact order for the family.
Odell, in turn, offered his side of the story. He claimed he had tried to help Waller, but fled the scene after allegedly being cut by him. Odell further stated that Waller was intoxicated and acting erratically, throwing bottles and lunging at cars. He said he had left to call the police from a nearby store and denied intentionally fleeing.
What I'm going to request from you, Mr. Odell, is not to have any contact, none whatsoever. Okay, and that's going to be put in your bond.
Yes,
no contact. I am going to set you a bond today,
yes, ma'am.
but it's going to be high, okay, because of the circumstances. I'm going to set your bond in the amount of $100,000 cash or surety, and I'm going to require that be posted before you are released. Do you understand? And not only that, the situation is because you're not from Greenwood. That's another thing. Yes.
Originally, I'm from Ware Shoals, South Carolina. I went to Ware Shoals High School.
Okay.
And I've been in Belton for 2 years. I just changed my
your address
at the DMV in Anderson when I had to get the gold star on, or I was supposed to get the gold star to get
the real ID.
Yes, ma'am.
Gotcha.
And that made me change because I had moved to Belton.
Okay.
So,
yeah. If that's where you live, that's where it should be. And the fact that you do live in Belton, is one reason why your bond is so high. And another, the seriousness.
Yes, ma'am. I understand.
Of what happened is why it's so high.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's what I'm requesting. Do you have any questions?
Is there any way I can get my family to the window? I can talk to them.
That would be up to the sergeant here once this is over.
I apologize. He told me that.
Okay. It will be up to him.
So is it like the whole $100,000 to get out of jail?
Cash or surety. Do you understand what that means? That means $100,000 cash, or your family can get a bondsman to post a percentage of it.
And how much would the percentage?
Depends on what bondsman you get.
Okay.
Okay?
The judge considered Odell's previous criminal behavior, including his prior conviction for leaving the scene of an accident, and emphasized that leaving the scene of a serious incident was unacceptable, regardless of his alleged fear. She acknowledged Odell's local ties, but noted his current residence in Belton and the violent nature of the incident when setting a high bond. The court set Odell's bond at $100,000, with conditions including GPS monitoring and a no-contact order with the victim or his family. No public updates or new developments have been reported till today. Aaron von Ehlinger was born on May 7, 1982, in Orofino, Idaho. He served in the U.S. Army, including a deployment to Afghanistan. After his military service, he earned a degree in political science from the University of Alabama. In June 2020, his political career took off when Idaho Governor Brad Little appointed him to the Idaho House of Representatives to fill a vacant seat. By November 2020, von Ehlinger had won a full term and was serving as a Republican lawmaker. In March 2021, during the legislative session, von Ehlinger invited a 19-year-old state house intern, referred to in court as Jane Doe, to dinner. Afterward, he took her to his apartment in Boise. According to the intern, what started as a casual evening turned into a traumatic encounter. She later reported that von Ehlinger forced her and non-consensually became intimate.
This case is about power. Power wielded in the wrong hands. On March 9th of 2021, the defendant, Aaron von Ehlinger, wielded that power against a 19-year-old intern and overcame her resistance. And he forced her to allow his penis inside of her mouth, and he forced his finger inside of her. Now, during the course of this trial, you will learn that in February of 2021, JV was just 19 years old, and she was living out or working towards her career aspirations. And she was working as an intern at the Idaho State Capitol, helping representatives with various tasks. At that same time, the defendant was at the Capitol in his capacity as a state representative. And it's there at that Capitol where he met JV and he began to interact and seek her out. You will learn that during one of these interactions, he gave this 19-year-old intern his state representative card that had his cell phone number handwritten on the back. And during these interactions, you will learn that the defendant, who was 38 years old at the time, asked this 19-year-old intern out on a date. And that date was set for March 9th. And on March 9th, the defendant picked up JV a block away from the state capitol and drove her to Barbacoa, where the two had dinner. The defendant then took JV back to his apartment where he was staying while the session was going. This is where the rape and forcible penetration took place. You will learn that JV tried to resist, that she tried to make excuses. You will learn that she said she wasn't on birth control, that she hadn't shaved, that she wasn't ready, that they could get in trouble, that she didn't want to, that he was hurting her, and she told him no. He didn't stop, and he didn't listen to JV.
Shaken, the young woman reported the assault to a state house supervisor 2 days later. The complaint triggered two parallel investigations, one by the Idaho House Ethics Committee and another by Boise police.
Now, JV didn't report this and sexual assault until March 11th, when she next had to return to the state capitol and face the man that had just raped her. Now, you'll learn and hear from JV's mother, Cherie Davis. And she'll talk to you about an early morning phone call she got on March 11th. She'll talk to you about how this was an unusual time for her to be receiving a phone call from JV, and she will describe JV's demeanor and tone during that phone call. She will also describe how the events of March 9th destroyed JV's world and shattered her confidence. And you'll learn that when JV went to the state capitol on March 11th, she immediately informed the Assistant Sergeant of Arms, Kimberly Blackburn. And you'll hear from Miss Blackburn. And she will talk to you about that interaction she had with JB that morning. She will talk to you about her appearance, her demeanor, her tone, her emotional state. And you'll learn that this was reported to the Boise Police Department, and detectives Monty Iverson and Brandon Joseph were assigned. They responded to the state capitol and met with JB, and eventually escorted her to Faces of Hope in downtown Boise. You'll learn that it was there that a sexual assault examination was done, and swabs were taken from various locations on JB's body, including her stomach, where the defendant had ejaculated. Now, these swabs were then sent to the Idaho State Police Forensics Lab for testing and comparison to a sample that was collected from the defendant by Detective Joseph. And you will learn that this sample matched that sample that was taken from JB's stomach.
In April 2021, the Ethics Committee held a public hearing. The intern, visibly distressed, testified about the assault. Von Ehlinger insisted the encounter had been consensual. However, the committee unanimously concluded that his behavior was inappropriate and recommended that he be censured and suspended without pay. Before the full House could vote on his expulsion, Von Ehlinger resigned on April 29, 2021. Shortly after his resignation, Von Ehlinger left the country, but in September 2021, upon his return to the U.S., he was arrested and formally charged with and forcible penetration using a foreign object. He pleaded not guilty. The trial began in April 2022. Although the victim tried to testify, she broke down and left the courtroom in tears.
In the matter of the state of Idaho versus Aaron von Ehlinger, as to the charge of rape from count 1, we, the jury, unanimously find the defendant guilty. As to the charge of forcible penetration by use of a foreign object in count 2, we, the jury, unanimously find the defendant not guilty. Both verdicts signed this day by the presiding jury.
You may be seated.
The jury found Von Ehlinger guilty of but cleared him of the second charge. He was taken into custody immediately after the verdict.
I had to note that you have a pattern of explaining, excusing, deflecting, and blaming others for the circumstances you find yourself in. That factor doesn't mitigate its favor of the sentence for the prisoner. I've thought about the pre-sentence investigation's recommendation to retain jurisdiction, and I have come to the conclusion that I am completely unclear of what the basis for that recommendation is. The retained jurisdiction program is fundamentally a period of time for treatment and evaluation. And given the attitudes that you have projected in this case, it appears to me that that is not a practical recommendation at this time. You are not ready at this point to engage in treatment. In considering all the factors informing my decision, recognizing my obligation to make a discretionary decision based on reason, I concluded that the appropriate sentence in this case is a unified term of 20 years, consisting of a minimum term of confinement of 8 years fixed, followed by an indeterminate period of 12 years. I won't impose a fine. I will order that you pay court costs and a civil penalty in the amount of $5,000 in favor of the victim in this case. Additionally, I'm going to order that you pay restitution of $2,015.39 and require that once released from incarceration that you comply with the requirements to register as a sex offender as set forth in Title 18, Chapter 3 of the Code. At this time, you are remanded to the custody of the sheriff to be delivered to the Department of Corrections for execution of sentence. There is no bail to exonerate.
In August 2022, Judge Michael Reardon sentenced him to 20 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 8 years. During sentencing, the judge pointed out Von Ehlinger's lack of remorse and his tendency to blame others for his actions. He was also ordered to register as a offender and was given a no-contact order with the victim, effective until 2055. A month later, in September 2022, von Ehlinger filed an appeal with the Idaho Supreme Court, arguing that the trial process had been unfair. As of now, that appeal remains pending. He is currently serving his sentence with a chance of parole in 2030. On the evening of June 19, 2021, a tragic scene unfolded in Greenville, South Carolina. Inside a parked vehicle near the intersection of Jenkins Street and Anderson Road, 25-year-old Michaela Adriana Brown was shot. The suspected shooter was Dylann Amonte Choice, 23 years old at the time. After the shooting, Choice fled the scene on foot. Along his path, he discarded a 9mm handgun, which police later recovered. When emergency crews arrived, it was too late. Michaela was pronounced dead at the scene. The Greenville County coroner confirmed that she had died from a gunshot wound. Her death was ruled a homicide. Michaela left behind a daughter. Friends and family described her as full of life, always smiling, and deeply loved by those around her. Police quickly tracked down Dylann Choice and arrested him.
Now, Mr. Choice, I understand that you have been charged with 2 warrants in this matter. The first is a charge of murder. The second, a charge of possession of a weapon during a violent crime. The murder warrant alleges that on June the 19th, this past Saturday, that you shot the victim in this case, Ms. Brown, and she was struck in the head at least one time, and she was pronounced dead inside the vehicle that she was in. You exited the vehicle and left the scene on foot. The firearm was discarded and later located by the police. You were identified by a number of witnesses who had a description of you and provided statements to the police that arrived on scene. The handgun was recovered along the path which you had fled, and the incident occurred on Jenkins Street near Anderson Road within the city limits of Greenville. And the weapons charge simply adds that this was a weapon that was possessed by you during the commission of a violent crime. Now on.
He was charged with murder and possession of a weapon during a violent crime. During his first court appearance, Choice revealed he had only completed the 11th grade, was unemployed, and had been receiving mental health treatment while in custody.
Now, Mr. Choice, you say you're not working currently. Have you worked in the past?
Yes, sir.
How much education did you have?
11th grade.
11th grade. All right. So are you currently under the supervision of any physician or counselor or anything like that? Take any kind of medication for any kind of mental health issues or anything?
Yes, sir.
You do? Okay. But I mean, who do you go to get those prescriptions?
I was prescribed from Prisma Health.
I'm sorry?
I was prescribed from Prisma Health.
Oh, and by Prisma, so you have a physician over there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I told folks before y'all came in, you're not going to be able to have me set a bond. The law in South Carolina as such is that you, by this charge, are subjected to the possibility of a life sentence in prison. And for that reason, it's beyond my jurisdiction. So you'll have to be taken up to the state court when the solicitor's office and your attorney have scheduled the hearing for a bond to be set, and they'll have a bond hearing in state court for you. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
All right. So you understand further that you have an absolute right to an attorney, an absolute right to a jury trial in this matter, and that if you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you before any case is heard. You understand that? Further, I hope you've been advised and would tell you you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law if you give any kind of statement. And if you choose not to answer questions, that's your right. And you can have your attorney present at any time when you are questioned. You understand that? All right. So, well, I'm going to defer bond to the circuit court for the purpose of these charges and anything further other from the city of Detective Harris?
No, Your Honor.
All right, so well, I appreciate your attendance as well. And as a result of what has occurred here today, I'm going to bind you over to the custody of the sheriff until such time as you are released by a circuit court judge. So if you'll step back in the back with him, that'll take you over.
Given the seriousness of the charges, which could lead to a life sentence, the municipal judge passed the bond decision to the state circuit court. Choice was denied bond and remained at the Greenville County Detention Center. The case was investigated by both the Greenville Police Department and the County Coroner's Office, who worked together to piece together what happened and ensure justice for Michaela. In the days after her death, the Greenville community came together for a candlelight vigil to honor Michaela's memory. Family and friends shared stories of her kindness, her bright smile, and the deep pain left behind by her sudden loss. As of now, there have been no public updates on the trial or sentencing of Dylann Amante Choice. Big thanks to our viewers for joining the courtroom journey with us. Your interest in the stories of justice is what keeps our channel alive.